Hey best friend, what's up? Welcome back to my channel, you guys, and welcome back to another true crime episode series, part of my series. Welcome back to Pretty Faces Cold Cases, y'all. I know that you guys love hearing true crime from me. I guess my storytelling abilities can do some good. Today's case is a case that I have been researching for weeks. I have done deep dives on this case, and today we're going to be talking about Phoenix Coldon and what could have happened to her. She is currently considered missing. She's been missing for about 9 years now, and so I just wanted to give you guys all of the information and see what your thoughts are. I'm telling you right now, this story has way more twists and turns than I ever anticipated. Before we get into our deep dive today, I want to give a special shout out and a special thank you to today's sponsor, Skillshare. If you have not heard about Skillshare, it is an online community where you can learn so many things from so many different niches, from photography to videography to marketing, animation, working with Photoshop, Adobe Premiere. These are genuinely skills in my opinion, and we are definitely in the age of self-teaching. Currently, I am taking a podcasting class by Nicola Matthews Akome. The class is called Podcasting Secrets, How to Start Your Own Podcast. You guys know that I recently started a podcast with my husband, and this course has given us so many amazing ideas. It's just opened up our creativity and really led us on the right path on how to be established as a podcast, some different things that we can do to make our job easier. Just sitting there for literally 15 minutes, we got through 5 courses in this one lesson. So it is so convenient just being able to have these skills for yourself and know how to do these things. Trying photography, videography, learning how to even make it in the YouTube space. So definitely check it out if you haven't already. I'm going to leave the link in my description box below. Of course, if any of you guys are interested in expanding your knowledge, girl, on any of these topics, definitely take advantage of this. The first 1,000 people to use this link will get a free premium membership with Skillshare. And then after that, it's about $10 a month. It's a small investment for a large amount of knowledge. So I would definitely recommend it. Thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this deep dive into Phoenix Coldon's case. I'm going to be honest with you. I did not hear about this case prior to one of my Glamazons reaching out to me. Earlier this month, I received a personal message from a Glamazon of mine that requested that I cover Phoenix Coldon's missing persons case. So here's her message. Hey Nikki, just wanted to see if you might want to cover Phoenix Coldon. Her 2-part series is on Oxygen. Her story is odd and interesting. Many don't think that she's dead, but that she took up another identity and possibly was human trafficked. Her mom has given updates on her thoughts even as recent as February. Her story didn't get much coverage, which is really disappointing, being that she's been missing since 2011. She's a beautiful, intelligent young lady, but there are tons of speculation that she took up another identity and went missing. Thank you to my Glamazon for bringing this story to my attention for my next Pretty Faces Cold Cases episode. Now, there's a lot that we have to go over. There's like layers and layers of information, so definitely buckle in. 23-year-old Phoenix Coldon was last seen on the afternoon of December 18th, 2011, pulling out of her driveway from her family home in Spanish Lake, Missouri. Driving her 1998 black Chevy Blazer, Phoenix left her parents' home without saying a word and never returned. Less than 3 hours later, her Chevy Blazer would be found in the traffic lane near Interstate 70 in East St. Louis on the corner of then 9th and St. Clair, about a half-hour drive away from her home. Now, since then, construction has changed some of the cross streets of the location, but that's around where her car was found. So for over 9 years, Phoenix Coldon's case was reported with specific details of how her belongings were found, including her vehicle, her shoes, purse, identification, all of that. But very recently, in a documentary covering Phoenix's case that aired on Oxygen, released more information from Officer Perry, the responding officer of the call of an abandoned vehicle, that directly contradicts the information that had been given to the public for nearly a decade. So the morning after Phoenix left her parents' home, they noticed that she had not come home overnight, which was not like her. So they began to be concerned about her safety and her whereabouts. Her parents called the police to notify them that their daughter was missing, and then St. Louis PD sent a police officer to meet with the parents to gather information on their alleged missing daughter. Over the next 2 weeks, Phoenix's parents would print posters, the missing person signs, spoke with their neighbors, and they were visiting and calling nearby hospitals looking for Phoenix, to no avail. Where was she? How could this young, beautiful woman just disappear into thin air? It's like she just gone. I could not understand how somebody could just like walk out and never be seen again, or not even be able to be traced. So that's what makes this case crazy. Who was Phoenix Coldon? What was she going through in her life at the time? Most importantly, who knows what happened to her and hasn't said anything? Let's begin. Phoenix was born Phoenix Reeves on May 23rd, 1988 in California to her parents Goldia and Lawrence Coldon. She was born and raised in California during her early school years, and then she ended up moving with her parents to Missouri for her father's job as a computer system engineer. The Coldons were known to be quite conservative and a pretty religious family. Now, Phoenix's parents, especially her mother, was known to be very strict. Some would call her controlling. But as Goldia and Lawrence's only child, Phoenix had pretty high expectations placed on her, and she was prepared to meet every single one of them. Phoenix was smart, disciplined, self-motivated, and highly ambitious. She played multiple instruments, including the piano, the guitar, and the violin. Now, Phoenix was also a local junior fencing champion as a foilist fencer and was said to be pretty skilled at the sport. She was also a member of the bell choir at her church that she had attended with her mother ever since she moved to Missouri back when she was in 5th grade. Now, Phoenix is described by many of her peers as being extremely kind-hearted. She had a wonderful sense of humor. She loved music to the point that her mother recalls her playing the piano every Saturday morning while at home. Phoenix was very well-spoken, polite, and very well-mannered, thanks to the life lessons that her mother passed on to her throughout her upbringing. Now, Mrs. Goldia, Phoenix's mother, was what some would call an old school, no-nonsense mother that had rules in place for Phoenix to abide by. Rules such as never cross your legs at the knees, it shows too much skin, don't be too loud, don't use vulgar language, act like a lady because after all, you are one. Some may hear these things and call Goldia a too strict parent, but to Goldia, she was trying to raise a respectable young woman and protect her from the ugliness of the world. So because of this, Phoenix was homeschooled from the time that she was in 5th grade until she graduated high school. So she was homeschooled by her mother. At age 18, Phoenix decided that it was time to live on her own with a friend and move out of her parents' house for college. So she was enrolling into the University of Missouri at St. Louis and wanted to begin paving her own way through life outside of the sheltered upbringing of her past. Believing her daughter, Goldia agreed to co-sign for an apartment for Phoenix and her alleged girlfriend roommate so that they could attend college and live near campus. Phoenix would end up living at this residence for the next 4 years. Fast forward to Phoenix's junior year of college, and her parents decided that they needed to cut back on expenses, and they felt that it was best for Phoenix to come back home to live until she finished college. They couldn't afford the rent of the other apartment anymore, so Phoenix was given no choice but to come back and live with her parents in their middle-class home in Spanish Lake, Missouri. Fast forward about 6 months to December 18th, 2011, 1 week before Christmas. And at the time, Phoenix's parents' car was in the shop and was said to be for a while. So they were temporarily relying on her for transportation. So that morning, Phoenix drove and attended church with her mom at around 11 in the morning. And Phoenix played in the handbell choir. So she immediately went to perform during praise and worship and then proceeded to sit in the congregation to hear the sermon. Now, apparently growing up, Phoenix always sat next to her mom in church, but in the recent months, Phoenix had been inching further and further away from her mom, you know, a pew here, a pew there, until she was in a completely different section, which is what she did on this particular day as well when she went to church with her mom. So after service, the two headed to a nearby grocery store to pick up a few things, and then they arrived home at around 2 p.m. After arriving home, Goldia recalls seeing her daughter Phoenix go out front and sit in her car for a while, which she sometimes did to take phone calls and have a little bit more privacy. And her mom actually made a comment about this, and she was like, I, felt like she had enough privacy in her room. I don't know why she did that, but she had done this many times before, no big deal. So after some time in her car, Phoenix played basketball for a little while outside, and then at around 3 p.m., Lawrence Coldon, Phoenix's father, remembers seeing his daughter calmly walking through the living room without saying a word. She walked out the front door into her car, and before he knew it, she was backing out of the driveway without even a goodbye. Now, although this was odd for Phoenix to do, Lawrence assumed that she must be going to a nearby corner store or maybe to a friend's house. She'll be back. But he said something interesting. He said that she walked through the living room and left with conviction, like she was very confident in it. As the night progressed and it got later and Phoenix was not home, the Coldons began to worry. She had never disappeared like this before without telling anybody. Her parents waited until the next morning. The next morning comes around, Phoenix was still missing. So her parents started asking neighbors and friends whether or not anyone had seen her. And everybody, it was a resounding no. Nobody had seen her. And then, interestingly enough, all communication from her phone ceased the day that she went missing. There was no bank activity from her debit cards or credit cards from the moment that she left. No more after that. So by mid-morning, Phoenix's parents contacted the local police to report Phoenix as missing. So they sent the officer out to meet with the parents to gather information on their alleged missing daughter. So among the questions that they asked Phoenix's mom was, what was Phoenix's birthday? To which her mother replied, May 23rd, 1988. To which the officer said, well, that makes her 23 years old. She's a grown woman. She's not obligated to tell you where she's going and when. Phoenix's mother responded, I don't know what wolves raised you, but that's not how we do things here. And I expect you to make a missing persons report for my daughter. So at that point, the officer went back to his squad car, ran the plates of Phoenix's car. Nothing came up. No stolen vehicle report, no reports of an accident, no nothing. After this, the officer said that he would return to the station and go ahead and file the missing persons report as Goldia had requested. Now, Goldia had a feeling that this officer was lying to her. So she ended up calling the station herself, requesting his supervisor, found out that he had not filed a missing persons report, and she went ahead and got that filed immediately. At this point, there was no leads. There was literally no identifiers to where Phoenix could be until New Year's Day, January 1st, 2012. The Coldons were informed that Phoenix's Chevy Blazer was sitting in an impound lot in the middle of East St. Louis, Illinois. The way that this car was found was very sketchy and very sad because a family member of Phoenix just so happened to check tow yards for Phoenix's car, and by a stroke of luck, the car was finally found and her parents were notified, and this was 2 weeks after Phoenix's disappearance. How had nobody reported this car yet? How was it not found and processed that it was an association with a missing person by now? Well, turns out that the location that Phoenix was living in at the time and the location that her car was found are in 2 separate states, meaning 2 separate jurisdictions and 2 separate databases. So in addition, the car was never reported as stolen, and the processing of abandoned cars don't typically coincide with missing persons reports from out of state especially, or so law enforcement claims. Now, after having a battle with the city about having to pay a tow yard fee that was in excess of $1,000 waived, the family was finally granted access to enter the vehicle, and they were able to remove all items from the car to keep. This is where things get a little bit sticky. So it was reported several times that Phoenix's personal belongings, such as her purse, her shoes, her keys, were all left inside the car. But we're going to go more into detail about that in just a moment. But at this point, the case is at a standstill. We have Phoenix's car that went undetected, sitting in a tow yard in the middle of East St. Louis for 2 weeks untouched. There are no leads from friends or family about Phoenix's whereabouts, so now the search is on. At this point in my case study, I wanted to break down Phoenix's life and see what she could have been involved with, who she may have been associated with, that could lead to what may have happened to her. I'm going to break this down into sections. Firstly, let's talk about the location of her car, where it was found, in East St. Louis. East St. Louis is known to be a sketchy part of town, with one of the highest crime rates in America, ranking at number 19 on the crime index out of 100. So in this city, you have a 1 in 97 chance of being a victim of a violent crime compared to the rest of St. Louis at 1 in 246. Now, this area is riddled with drugs and violence, shootings, murders, and dilapidated housing. So the question becomes, why would Phoenix go here of her own volition? Or was she brought there? Or was her car dropped off there by someone else? Another interesting note to keep in mind is that the location of Phoenix's car was right next to I-70, Interstate 70, a sex trafficking superhighway, according to the press, with over 3,300 reported human trafficking cases since 2007. So Phoenix left her home at around 3 p.m. and Phoenix's car was found abandoned in East St. Louis less than 3 hours later at 5:30 p.m. After the car was located in the tow yard 2 weeks later, the police did an informal search and conducted DNA testing and did a homicide investigation within the car. Apparently, DNA testing only resulted in Phoenix's DNA and her mother's DNA being found present in the car. So let's talk about what was actually found in the car. So like I said before, it had been reported for almost a decade now that Phoenix's car was running, had the keys in the ignition, driver door was open, shoes and purse inside, seemingly like Phoenix had been snatched. But that wasn't the truth, because recently during an interview on Phoenix's Oxygen documentary, the responding police officer that responded to the call about Phoenix's car the day she went missing contradicted all of that. According to Officer Perry, Phoenix's car was off when he arrived. Keys were not in the car. All of the doors were closed and nothing but miscellaneous items were found inside, such as mail and pens. He said that nothing seemed unusual or out of place in the car. He assumed that the driver had run out of gas and just called for the car to be towed to the nearest tow yard from there. Now, the officer claims that he assumed that this car may have run out of gas because of the Missouri plates on the vehicle. So he felt like this vehicle isn't even from this state. So maybe they ran out of gas. It really isn't a crazy assumption. You guys, this changes everything. Everything. You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me in a strange way of the Elisa Lam case, because, you know, do you guys remember, like, during a lot of the time when the case was actually being released to the press, a big part was, you know, that her body was found in this tank and that the lid to the tank was closed. And details like that matter, because it can make or break somebody's entire case study to try to figure out what happened to this person. And like, then at the end of it, it turns out that the first officer was wrong and that she was actually found with the lid open. So this reminds me, in a weird way, of Elisa Lam's case in that way, because for so many years, you guys, for almost a decade. Don't get me wrong, Phoenix Coldon's case was not nearly as publicized as it should be. People in her own community never heard about her on the news, never had police come to their home and speak to them. Never. They never heard about it. It was like she didn't even exist. There was one journalist named Chandrea Thompson that took a special interest in Phoenix's case back in 2012. And she was the one that like kind of brought her case forward. And since that time, this journalist reported that Phoenix's car was found open with the key still inside, with the lights on, with her purse inside, her shoes, that definitely spells something bad happened to her. But if this officer is saying no, he specifically said no. It literally looked like an abandoned vehicle. There was no sign of a struggle. There was no sign of, violence. There was no sign of distress. There was no personal items in the car. It wasn't on. The doors were shut. And I just had it towed. And that's why I had it towed. So super, super weird. When investigators asked Phoenix's parents where they got their initial information from about Phoenix's car, both Goldia and Lawrence couldn't remember exactly who told them that. To this day, we don't know where that information came from in the first place. Maybe in that moment when you start hearing information and you're trying to retain all of this when your child is missing, maybe you just hear things wrong. But I found that interesting that neither one of them could really tell anyone where they got that information from about Phoenix's car and it not having been found the way that they originally said it was found. So if the reports were wrong about how the car was found, well, wouldn't it make sense that maybe they were wrong about what was found in the car? Let's go into what was actually found in Phoenix's car. Like I said, Phoenix's parents were given access to the vehicle in the tow yard, and they were able to remove any and all belongings. So among the items found in her car were a pair of socks, a few CDs, highlighter, lotion, receipts, a few pieces of mail, and a T-Mobile bill going into collections. But the Coldons didn't have T-Mobile. This piece of mail was direct evidence of Phoenix having a second phone that her parents didn't know about. A whole different way of her to communicate with the outside world without her parents knowing about it. The weird part is, Phoenix's parents didn't even notice this bill being associated to another account that wasn't theirs until now, almost 10 years later. So this is where the story starts taking several turns. So I found something interesting about a statement that Phoenix's longtime church pastor said about her. He referred to her as a child, as a kid, multiple times in his interview. And when he was reminded of Phoenix's age, like she's 23, why do you keep referring to her as a child? He said, and I quote, "It was very clear that she wasn't particularly worldly. She had some maturing to do, especially when it came to living life. Someone who was somewhat naive of the ways of the world." End quote. Phoenix had been homeschooled by her mother since she was in the 5th grade. The only social interactions that she had were with those involved in activities approved by her mother. So by the time Phoenix was an adult, it had been clear that she had been sheltered during much of her upbringing, but this would soon change. So after the discovery of the second phone, an investigation was done into Phoenix's phone calls, her phone records, personal videos, text messages, all of those things, but only on the phone that she had on her parents' plan. The second phone from T-Mobile, they were not granted access to those records. But even still, these phone records from her parents' plan were still very, very helpful. So with the help of these phone records and some college friends of Phoenix's, it was discovered that Phoenix had a longtime boyfriend that she had been living with in the co-signed apartment that her parents paid for while she was in college. His name was Michael B. And B, Phoenix had dropped out of the current semester of college at the time of her disappearance, but she still told her parents and her friends and other family that she was attending college, but she had already dropped out. Phoenix had a whole other life that she was living with her live-in boyfriend in college for the last 3 years, and then all of a sudden she drops out of school without her parents knowing, and then she was told to come back home due to financial cutbacks, and at that moment her freedom as she knew it was stripped from her. So Phoenix returned home in the summer of 2011. By the time she disappeared, she had only been home for about 6 or 7 months. So according to her mom, she must have been very good at hiding her tracks with this boy. She said that she went to Phoenix's apartment multiple times to check on her. And she even went through her closet, through her medicine cabinet. She had no qualms with going through Phoenix's things, and she said that there was no evidence of a man being there. But he had been there, and he had been living there. Phoenix and Michael had a lot of discussions, and the calls were happening more frequently as it came closer to the day that she disappeared. Like, for example, the day before she disappeared, on December 17th, in the phone records, there was a call with her boyfriend Mike for 116 minutes. That is a long conversation, right? So, you know, it stands to reason that maybe he knows where she was at, like mentally at that time, the day before she takes off. Maybe he knows where she's at, where she's going. Maybe they had something planned together. You know what I mean? So that's something to keep in mind. 116 minutes the night before she went missing. Then fast forward to the day of, it was really important to kind of see what was going on her phone the day that she went missing. Was there a call that maybe triggered this spontaneous decision, or was this something that she planned, or what? So the way that her call log looked the day that she went missing, first call that she received was at 9:34 in the morning, and this call came from her mom's friend Rosie, and she was attending church, but she was calling them beforehand. And again, this was at 9:34, and it lasted about 2 minutes. Then at 9:41 in the morning, just a few minutes later, there was a call from her boyfriend Mike that lasted 6 minutes. Then church happened, and then at 1:46 p.m. there was a call to her boyfriend again, but this one only was for about a minute. And apparently, according to the phone company, a lot of times if it is recorded, like if the time duration of a call is recorded at 1 minute, it most likely means that like they were sent to voicemail, like they got their voicemail. And even if the call was only like 20-30 seconds, they still log it as a minute. So we don't know if they actually talked. We don't know if that was just her leaving a voicemail. We don't know. But there was a call at 1:46 in the afternoon, the day that she went missing, that lasted for a minute or so, we think, to her boyfriend, Michael. And then after that, radio silence. No incoming or outgoing calls after this time. After Phoenix leaves her home, silence. Of course, her boyfriend was questioned later about the 116-minute phone call that he had with her the night before she went missing. And this boy decided to say that he had absolutely no recollection of the entire conversation that he had with Phoenix before her disappearance, which was super sketchy. And however sketchy that seems to be, the homicide investigators assigned to Phoenix's case said that they were, and I quote, they could say with 100% confidence that Mike, Phoenix's boyfriend, was in no way, shape, or form involved or had anything nefarious to do with Phoenix's disappearance. They said that he was the most cooperative and the most upfront person that they talked to throughout this entire investigation. End quote. The next person of interest that may have some additional information about what happened to Phoenix was her best friend since 17, named Akira. Now, Akira lived about 4 houses away from Phoenix, and they began a friendship back in like 2005 when Phoenix was like 17. They created a really close relationship with one another, but not too close because Goldia didn't really feel like Akira was a particularly good influence on Phoenix. So according to Akira, she met Phoenix while she was still homeschooling, and apparently Phoenix hated it. She wanted to experience normal high school events and experiences like prom and the like. So once Phoenix came home from college in 2011, everything went downhill from there. She said that Phoenix wasn't allowed to leave her stoop while talking to her, that they had to stay and talk on her porch the whole time. But even more odd, Akira recalls Phoenix believing that someone was following her, and Goldia would tell the girls that someone was watching them if they sat in their neighborhood park or, you know, just kind of like went somewhere on their own. She would tell the girls that someone was watching them. And Akira noticed that Phoenix seemed to become more and more paranoid as the days went on. And the paranoia and the mood shift was so intense that there was an occasion where Phoenix pulled a knife out on Akira out of frustration and then quickly put it away, but Akira was greatly affected by the situation. So the girls ended up fighting about what Akira says was something stupid. Unfortunately, they stopped talking about a week before Phoenix went missing, so there wasn't any additional information that her best friend could give us at this time. Let's talk about the infamous selfie video, okay? So when phone records were released, buried in the files of the phone was a selfie video that Phoenix filmed of herself, and this video was recorded on November 15th, 2011, 1 month and 3 days before her disappearance. Now in this video, she looks somber and worried, and she begins the video by saying, "I got ditched. This is ridiculous." Now, due to copyright restrictions, I can't show you the clip directly, but some of the key quotes from Phoenix were as follows. "I just want to start over. People don't give a fuck. I gotta see things for what they are. I just want to be happy, man. It probably would have been a better situation if I would have stuck with how I used to be." Then she went into her own version of the Serenity Prayer, asking for God's help to accept the things that she can't change. Then the plot thickened as Phoenix's best friend dropped an absolute bomb of information. As the story unfolded, another boyfriend was discovered. Now we'll call him Cell Phone Mike because his name was Mike also, and he worked at a cell phone store. And that's where he met and began talking to Phoenix. They also went to the same college. So Cell Phone Mike hooked Phoenix up with another phone, the second phone, to talk to him on, and gave her a bunch of discounts for her phone plans. This secondary phone was used to keep Cell Phone Mike a secret from both her live-in boyfriend Mike B, from him, and her mama. So before we go any further, I want to know an important piece of advice that Phoenix was given by her mother. Phoenix was taught to seek friends at her level or above her. She was taught to be nice to everyone, but don't allow just anyone into her circle, right? So Goldia stated that Phoenix was seeking friends who looked like her, who had the same skin color as her, and I think that's what got my baby into trouble, end quote. Now this is interesting because, you know, of course, Phoenix Coldon is a young, beautiful black woman. Where Phoenix lived, this was, you know, a middle class, you know, Missouri neighborhood, Spanish Lake, but Phoenix was homeschooled, and then she participated in, like, you know, fencing, and her mother made this comment, and I found it a little bit weird because she really showed disdain at the thought of Phoenix making other black friends. Like, she didn't want Phoenix to associate with a particular type of crowd, or for Phoenix to get to know her own culture, her own background, or to get involved with people that weren't a good influence on her. But she made this specific comment and statement, and it didn't sit well with me. Now, as with many missing persons cases, there have been quite a few sightings of Phoenix, reported sightings of Phoenix after her disappearance, but one very notable one that really stuck with me was a former churchgoer, a friend, that is convinced that she saw Phoenix on her flight in March of 2014. Apparently, this girl, she had been friends with Phoenix back in the day at church, and she knew Phoenix very well, saw her for years, grew up with her pretty much, and, like, you know, knew Phoenix, right? Assuming this was like for spring break. So this is March, and her friend said that she was on a plane from Vegas going back to St. Louis, and she was in her chair. She said that she was already seated, there were people boarding, and that she looked up and that she saw Phoenix, and she said she called her name and said Phoenix, and that this girl looked right at her, did not stop walking though. Like, she kept walking, but she looked at her and said, "Oh, do I remind you of somebody?" And she keeps walking while this girl says, "Yeah, you remind me of my friend Phoenix. And she said that by the time she was done with her sentence, that this girl had already like walked past her, didn't look at her, didn't say nothing, and just like went and found her seat. Her friend could not shake the feeling that that was Phoenix. She said on a scale of 1 to 10 of how sure she was that that was Phoenix, she put it at a level 9. Okay, so very, very, very sure. They asked her how Phoenix looked, you know, what was she wearing? Did she look okay? She said that Phoenix looked great, that she looked very well put together, that she looked like she was wearing pretty nice clothes and nice jewelry and necklaces and earrings. And then she said that this girl that looked like Phoenix was with 4 other young, attractive black women that were around her age as well, and they were all dressed the same way and, you know, very nice, and that there were 2 men with them on this flight who got onto the plane right after them, and these men look like they could be pro football players, like buff, like really in shape. And she put their ages at around mid-30s to 40s, so older. But she said that it was, you know, this girl that looked like Phoenix, 4 other girls, and then these 2 dudes on this flight back to St. Louis from Vegas. He flies all the way to St. Louis, and then when they land, he gets off the flight. She said that this girl that looked like Phoenix did not look at her, say anything to her, just avoided her. And so she went directly to guest services and reported to them that she was pretty positive that she just saw a missing person on the airplane. And she said that they called the police and that they did an entire search of the airport and the surrounding areas, and they could not find this woman. But her friend is so sure that that was Phoenix that day. Now, I don't know what to think of that. You guys let me know down in the comments. But as the investigation continued, both Mikes were interviewed and ultimately cleared of having anything to do with Phoenix's disappearance. However, with some digging, there are some suspicious, sketchy things found on cell phone Mike, okay? So his recent ex-girlfriend had filed a restraining order on him for domestic abuse and violence in their relationship. Now, this ex-girlfriend was gracious enough to give an interview with the agreement that her identity be protected and private. But she stated that cell phone Mike had a habit of being forceful at times and would abuse her on the regular in the relationship. But the weird part is she reported that shortly after Phoenix's disappearance, cell phone Mike would spend time looking up her case and specifically where the police were as far as leads in her case. And so his girlfriend noticed that he was looking up this girl's missing persons case frequently and asked him why he was so interested and what happened to this girl. And at first he said that he just found it interesting that this happened in their neighborhood and in their town. But as time went on, it was really bothering her. And like they kind of got into an argument about it. And he just blurted, "Why are you worried about a dead girl?" Flat out told her, like, "Why are you worried about this person? They're dead." Sketch, right? Okay. Final note that I want to leave you guys with before we get into the theories of this case is something that I found particularly interesting, like many of the things in this case, or pretty much all of it. This information is on a whole other level of crazy, but it could quite possibly tell us what happened to Phoenix. So this information came directly from her parents, from the Coldons, as they told a private investigator that they hired back in 2012 to begin his investigation on where Phoenix could be. So the Coldons informed their PI that in the year or so prior to Phoenix's disappearance, she had in the past gained access to the family home safe, and she took a few savings bonds out of there that were in her name, and it equated to about $2,500 total, give or take. Now, it doesn't stop there. Inside of the safe, next to the savings bonds, Phoenix came across 2 separate birth certificates with her name on them. It turns out that Phoenix was born as Phoenix Reeves, which was initially her mother's maiden name, which stands to reason that her mother was a single mother when she gave birth to her daughter Phoenix. Now, shortly after Lawrence and Goldia were married, Lawrence then adopted Phoenix, making her a Coldon as well. So she had her original birth certificate under the name Phoenix Reeves, and then she had her other birth certificate with her new name, Phoenix Coldon, but both birth certificates were legitimate, and they had these two separate names on them, which is an absolute perfect situation for somebody who wants to like start over or create a new identity. Like, this is a birth certificate. All she would have to do is like go get a social security number, go get like a driver's license. It would be no problem. Of course, there has to be a search into this name, not Phoenix Coldon, but Phoenix Reeves, because there's a chance that she could have used this birth certificate to just start over anew. So that's exactly what investigators did. They did a national search using the name Phoenix Reeves, and surprisingly, only 4 came up in the results. One of them was immediately excluded, deceased, and the 2 others were married, family, long family line. But the last one was crazy because this Phoenix Reeves had popped up about a month after Phoenix disappeared. And there was no other information associated with this name. There was no social security number. There was no identification. There was no, family connected to this name. It was just Phoenix Reeves and an address. So after about 6 months, this person also fell off the face of the earth. There's absolutely no record of this particular person anymore after the 6-month period after Phoenix went missing. But the address associated with this one Phoenix Reeves located in the middle of nowhere, Alaska. So of course, investigators got onto a flight and decided to track down the person that owned this address in Alaska. They ended up meeting with a woman that owned the property since 2002. She stated that she had never seen Phoenix, never allowed anybody to stay at her home. She never rented out rooms, and she never saw a girl that looked like Phoenix before. Investigator that spoke with this woman said that he was 100% confident that he sensed absolutely no deception when speaking to her about Phoenix. So he was inclined to believe her. He was a drugs investigator in the past. Like, he had a lot of training. So tend to lean more on the side of like trusting him because he wasn't with St. Louis PD. He was, this investigator for the Oxygen documentary. So he just said it so matter-of-factly, like, I sensed absolutely no deception in this woman. I think somebody just used her address for this name back then. That is all the evidence that we have concerning Phoenix Coldon. So now let's get into the theories. So theory number 1 is Phoenix was kidnapped and sold into sex trafficking. Now, this theory is definitely plausible considering where her car was found, the fact that it was in East St. Louis, which is an awful part of town. It's very dangerous over there, especially for a young woman by herself. Not to mention the highway that's located literally a stone's throw away that is known as the sex trafficking superhighway of America. It's very easy to take somebody and just like leave right away, and they can be in a whole other state in a matter of minutes. So I totally get that. Now, the part that's weird is, the way that her car was found, like the fact that it just kind of seemed like it was left there. Now, that doesn't mean that she wasn't trafficked, but I just think that maybe whatever Phoenix decided to do or wherever she decided to go, it happened within minutes. It was very fast because her car was found less than 3 hours after that. So whoever it was, whether it was her or whether it was somebody else, like, this happened very quickly after she left her parents' house. That's the only plausible explanation for that. If she had been kidnapped, was that somebody kidnapped her and then ended up taking her vehicle and dropping it off and like just kind of dumping it there. On to theory number 2. Phoenix ran away and started a new life with a new identity. Pieces of evidence that could back up this theory are a few different ones. Number 1, Phoenix was very sheltered, and Phoenix was not allowed to like express herself the way that she wanted to. She spent a lot of time with her parents all of her life. She was not accustomed to being social outside of, these activities that her mom put her in. So I think that, you know, over time that becomes a lot as you're trying to figure yourself out and you have a really, really strict parent. And I think that parents that are strict or they come off as controlling, you know, parents are always coming from a good place when it comes to stuff like that. You're kind of in this really hard spot as a parent. That's why this job is very hard, because you want to protect your kids from the ugliness in the world, but then you have to prepare your kids for the ugliness in the world. And then in order to prepare them for the ugliness of the world, you have to show them the ugliness of the world. I get, you know, a lot of people were kind of really critical of Phoenix's mom, and maybe, you know, maybe she was on the stricter side. I think that Phoenix missed out on a lot. I think that she was just kind of craving this freedom. And then she went to college. So from 5th grade onward, I mean, imagine being 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, being homeschooled while everybody else in your community, your best friend that lives down the street, they all go to regular school. And her best friend said that she wouldn't see Phoenix all day. Phoenix did not come outside until like after 3 p.m. when all the other kids got out of school. But, you know, up until that point and after, she was always inside. She didn't really have much of a life when she lived with her parents. And then when she turns 18, she goes to college. All of a sudden, she has her freedom. Like, she doesn't have to abide by her mom's rules. She doesn't have to dress the way that she's told to dress. She doesn't have to do this, that, and the third. And then she finds herself a boyfriend, the first Mike, and they end up living together long term in this apartment. When it comes to kids that are raised by strict parents, it does not mean that we are more obedient. It means that we just know how to be a lot more sneaky, learn how to cover our tracks better than a kid that doesn't have strict parents. So I'm not surprised that Phoenix was a master at keeping this boy from her mother, because of course, like, her mother co-signed, her parents were paying for this apartment. There is absolutely no way in hell that her mom was going to be okay with some boy living there. So she had to really keep it under wraps. He probably knew about it. They probably had like a whole escape plan. I get it. I totally get it. Also, not to mention the infamous video that she filmed just a month before she went missing, and the mental state that she was in, you guys, she seemed so distressed. She seemed depressed, distressed, very sad, almost remorseful. Like, she felt like she did something that she regretted. Like, she seemed regretful as well. Like, she wished that she could go back in time and not have whatever happened happen. Like, she wanted to have things the way that they used to be, and like, she wanted to start over. Like, there was something that she was ashamed of. She did say that she wanted to start over. She did say that nobody gave a fuck. She did say that, you know, the only person that wouldn't let her down was her. So there were all of these, you know, target words and phrases that she was using that indicate that somebody wants to run away or start a new life. So that's theory number 2. You guys let me know your thoughts. Theory number 3. This theory is kind of a mixture of the first and second theory. And this is that she wanted some time away, but was lured into sex trafficking instead and is too ashamed to come home because of it at this point. So, you know, during this investigation, they did interview sex trafficking survivors, and it is a very sad story. But they really gave some insight on what it's like to be trafficked. You know, more oftentimes than people think, it's not really a matter of like kidnapping somebody when it comes to sex trafficking. It can be as simple as having a normal or seemingly normal relationship with a boy, and then they said, you know, like, they gave an example of, you know, say things get tight with money, bills can't get paid. All of a sudden the boyfriend says, oh, you know, if you sleep with this guy one time and you get this money and we just make ends meet this one time, we can get through this together. And then he whispers sweet nothings to her, and then she does it because she loves him and she wants to make ends meet. She wants to make this situation work. And then all of a sudden it takes just one act that is deemed shameful to maybe your family or where you come from that will cause these girls and these victims to feel like they could never come home, because their abusers and the people that are holding them hostage are telling them that if they try to leave, or they're holding these photos and evidence of their past discretions over their head and threatening to ruin their life essentially if they were to try to leave or return home. There was something that was said in this documentary that was very haunting, and the investigator said, why kidnap someone when you can just talk them into going themselves and like sex trafficking themselves, pretty much. Like, you convince them and you offer them something that they need or they want, and then you make it to where it's impossible to leave. So I don't know, you guys, this had so many different layers. When I thought that I knew what happened, then there was something else that came out, then something else, then something else. Because honestly, at first I was like, she was stolen. She was stolen. Her car door was open. She was snatched. She was by herself. Like, maybe she tried to meet up with somebody and like it just went bad. But then, you know, I saw the video and I saw, like, I can't even imagine being that sheltered. So I want to know your guys' thoughts. This is all the information that I have on this case. I want your thoughts on this. And before I leave you to ponder and give me your thoughts down below, one last thing that I wanted to leave you guys with that I think has a lot to do with why Goldia raised Phoenix the way she did was at the very tail end of this documentary, she said, I never made my daughter out to be a goody two-shoes. I knew that she wasn't. She was human, number one. Number two, I know the different versions of Phoenix and what she was going through, because I went through something similar when I was her age in East St. Louis and surrounding areas, where people would try to lure me into doing crazy things. She said, but I was more street smart than Phoenix. And I just hope that curiosity didn't get the best of my child. I found that interesting. I think that Goldia lived a very different life before she had Phoenix. I think that maybe it wasn't as graceful and poised as she had her daughter's life to be. I think that she had been to East St. Louis. I think that she had grown up. I bet you money she grew up in a rough neighborhood. I bet you money she's seen some ugly, and it caused her to be overly, you know, cautious and really protect Phoenix from all of the things that she saw and went through. And not to mention, she was a young single mother when she had Phoenix, you know, to the point where Phoenix had her maiden name as her last name. So that says something. So before you guys go too hard on her, just know that she may have seen some terrible things and witnessed some terrible things, because the look on her face when she went back to those memories in her mind of the things that she has seen. As a mother, I get it. Like, I don't agree with it, but I get it. So just keep that in mind, you guys. I'm going to leave some links and resources down in my description box below for you guys to learn more about sex trafficking, especially educating yourself to keep yourself and people around you safe and cognizant and aware. This shit's scary when you look at the statistics. So I just want you guys to be safe. If you guys, anybody knows anything, because somebody knows something about something, you know what I mean? So this is Phoenix. She would be 30 years old by now. So if you guys have seen her, know anything about her, I will leave resources down below. Please contact authorities. Her mom said that no matter what you may have been through, Phoenix, what you've done, maybe things that you're not particularly proud of, that you could never even imagine people being okay with, your parents love you a lot, and there's nothing in the world that you could have ever possibly done to make them not love you or accept you. So let me know your thoughts and theories down below, with all things considered, because there's a lot. But I love you guys. Thank y'all so much for coming with me on this deep dive into Phoenix Coldon's case. If you guys have any additional requests for another Pretty Faces Cold Cases, definitely leave your requests down in the comments. The one with the most likes will be the one that I pick for my next episode. So have at it. I love you guys so much. If you're new here, I hope that you enjoyed yourself, and I hope you consider subscribing so you can see me in your subscription box. Here are my socials if you would like more Nikki in your life. I love y'all so much, and I will see your fine ass in my next video. Peace out, y'all.